Welcome to Owning the Goal, a podcast that helps you take charge of your sales success. I'm the creator and your host, Brian McFarland. I look forward to sharing insights and inspiration from my 40 plus year sales career as a seller and sales leader. And like you, I'm more than just a salesperson, which is why this isn't just a podcast about sales. I, and now we, will talk about other passions too, like books, sports, music, and mental health and fitness, and how they all relate to hitting our goals. Because success in sales is success in life. All right. Well, thank you for tuning in to Owning the Goal today. And I am so excited because this is our first interview that we've starting our podcast off. And I am so excited because we're welcoming back Leisa Aras, my good friend, who was one of my first guests on our other podcast, The Turnaround Artist, who we caught up with in Tucson, Arizona, as she was embarking upon her journey to walk across this great country of ours to raise awareness for mental fitness. Now we're checking back in and on a bit of a pivot. And today is day 99 of her journey. I love odd numbers like that. And she's in the midst again of her trek to raise awareness for mental fitness. And she's coming to us from the great state of Louisiana. And what Lisa's going to talk about today, as I finish introducing her, is really about her life, personal growth, reinvention, grit, and how to build, her own words, a life that actually feels like yours. Because one that is rooted in purpose, I love your words, not just profit, and having success on our own terms. So, all that being said, welcome from Louisiana, Leisa Aras.
Hey, Brian, how are you?
So good, and I'm so good and happy to have you on the show. If people are only listening, if they could only see the smiles that are radiating, and the big hug I want to give you when you get back to New York.
Thank
So,
you. I definitely miss 9:45 for sure.
so take us away, Miss. You got way more interesting stuff to talk about than I do, since you left us in Tucson, Arizona, and now you're Louisiana. So the
Yeah,
floor is
well,
yours.
and to backtrack further from that, like I left a 20-year career in real estate, which I was pretty good at. I enjoyed it, and I had some pretty successful um, times, but I really felt the burnout. And I felt like I didn't know how to control all those pieces in the sales process to stay successful and maintain that. And it just started feeling really inauthentic. Didn't feel like I was loving it anymore. I was enjoying it anymore. I was tired. I was exhausted. And COVID really crushed me with it. And that's where it comes back into reinvention and doing something with purpose. I did feel like when I was in real estate for 20 years that it was purposeful for a long time. And then when you stop enjoying it and when it starts changing in ways that you're not part of those changes, you don't, I like grassroots. I like being with my people and having conversations and really getting to know my clients. Whereas now it's turned into very much a transaction. You've taken the people, the humanity out of it. And I was just like, wow, we're selling people bullshit. Really. We're not, I didn't feel myself that I was actually being authentic anymore. So for
I
me
could
it was really, really important to pull back into my passions and start leaning in on things that I was passionate about. So I'm taking a walk across the country to talk about mental fitness and writing a book.
Oh, and you're writing a book as well. You're adding to
Yep.
that.
Yep.
Um, a, a couple of things there. I just got the pleasure of Lisa turning the camera around and showing me where she's staying at a campground in Louisiana. And while it looks pretty cool, I'm sure after you've walked this far, And she also just let me know she ran into a couple of copperhead snakes outside her cabin. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's fascinating and such a pivot um, from the crazy world of New York City overall.
Yeah.
And all I'm going to say is I am so proud of you that
Same.
you exited that real estate sales life because I can tell you with the few purchases and sales that I made here in New York, it was, I both incredibly admired real estate people because it seems like it's the hardest job in the world. But then there was a lot, you brought it up really well. There was a lot of inauthenticity
Yeah.
where when you say you were selling them BS, that's what I felt like a lot.
Yeah. I just felt like the market was not what I was. It wasn't gradually changing the way that it normally had in the 20 years I had been there. We were having so many ups and downs. 600,000 people left New York City in COVID. And so we had landlords who were scrambling, we had tenants who were scrambling, we had leases getting broken, we had sales falling through, we had sellers losing homes because they couldn't afford to keep them. And it was just like, wow, how did we as a society get to that point that we're not even helping people keep those dreams anymore? And I started seeing all the mental wear and tear that was going on in my clients, in my friends, in my colleagues. And I'm like, losing somebody to suicide 16 years ago, mental health is on my radar, mental fitness is on my radar. And I remember, Brian, in our building, both your apartment and my apartment look over Broadway. And I was ringing the cowbell at 7 o'clock at night one night, and I watched a man jump off the roof of the building across the street. And I was like, wow, he lives in a penthouse. So he's clearly successful. And he just jumped off a roof. And that was my big turning point of like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to sell people inauthenticity. I don't want to sell people a dream that they may not be able to actually continue keeping because it's out of their financial reach. They're struggling to make that payment. I had people borrowing money from their 401ks and their family members and friends to get a down payment. I had just so many people struggling. And as I'm walking across the country, yesterday I met a kid who's 18 years old, has a five wheeler, I guess, which is a um an RV that you tow behind your truck. He's 18 years old. He just finished college and he's like, I'm going to go get a job. And he's working in solar at 18, but he owns his own home. Yeah, it's a trailer, but he owns it. And he's smart and he's young and he's just out there working. And I'm like, okay, I need to see these kinds of people. I need to see how people are living. That's not New York City.
Yeah, for
And it
sure.
was really eye-opening. And they've struggled. They're from Georgia. They struggled. They're in Louisiana working because there's no work for them where they were. So this 18-year-old just graduated from college, from high school, got a job, has his own trailer, has his own truck. And I'm like, my kid didn't even get his driver's license till he was out of college.
And you've got very driven children.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. You
So,
know,
talk to me, Lisa, about, so the theme of this new show, as we had a little preamble beforehand,
mhm,
is owning the goal, right?
mhm,
And owning the goal is, as you and I knew in sales, right? You have a quota or you have a goal, or you're all commission based in real estate,
yeah,
as you were, right? I'm 50-50 paid in the way I am. So, but we're going for a much broader reach. Always the mission of any of our content production is to inspire people, to have them hear stories, and to allow them to walk away with tips and advice and thoughts, and let them know they're not alone. So where I'm going with that was talk to myself and our listeners about, so you decide to make this pivot. So, what are the goals you set for yourself? And I know you've got many.
Mhm.
Um, and then once you share those goals, then I guess follow with the thread of how you're so brilliant and you're so success oriented. What were the strategies and plans you put in place then to achieve those goals?
Mhm. So I did use a lot of my real estate experience and life experience for 20 years of to prepare for the walk, chunking things down. Like have your big goal. My goal is to get to New York City. That's my big goal, right? What's my why? My why is for mental fitness and suicide awareness. So my end goal is clear, get to New York City on foot. My why, my purpose is clear, mental fitness and suicide awareness. And then it comes to chunking it down, right? I try to do 20 miles a day. Am I going to give myself a really hard time if I don't do 20 miles a day? No. And I have that conversation with myself every day. There is some days where I'm just like, I've got to get to the next mile marker. Just the next mile marker. When I get to the next mile marker, I say it again and I say it again. So I think it's really important that we understand that goals are movable. And don't just sit there and say, okay, your goal can have lots of little goals inside of it. Doesn't just have to be, it's like a team member, right? All of your goals are like your team members. You've got your big one, that's your coach, I guess. That's your team manager. And then you've got all your little goals. Maybe they're your team members, maybe they're your positions on a soccer team. They're every little bit plays its role. So for me, I'm in a what's called a hard shell tent, which is a little tiny cabin that has electricity and four hard walls, nothing else, no insulation, nothing. It's basic, it's got a bed. But I don't have to put my tent up. I can stand up in it, and it's the same price as a campsite, right? So my goal was to stay here for just a couple of days. I ended up twisting my ankle, so now I'm here for a couple of days more. It's Easter. So I was like, okay, um, not giving yourself a hard time if your goal of getting to a certain place, like I should be in Mississippi by now. I'm not in Mississippi right now because I'm taking this rest. Did I fail at my goal? No. I just had to readjust it. And the nice thing is, I'm having more conversations because I'm staying still. Because it's Easter weekend, everybody's coming in. Where's your vehicle? Oh, you've got a push cart. What are you doing? So now I'm having all these really cool conversations, which is part of my goal. So it's recognizing that your goal sometimes comes and gets fulfilled in different ways. It's not always just about one path to get to your goals fruition. So,
That's that. Well, I loved when I learned from you. I mean, thank you for sharing that. I loved when I learned from you when we spoke in Tucson. You brought up the phrase that I had never heard in my life, chunking it down.
mhm,
And that's so reflective because in sales and in life, it's one day at a time, right?
right.
So
Yeah,
so many things. You can only do so much in a simple day,
right,
and you have to acknowledge your accomplishment and not your failure, right? So you didn't get to 20 miles. Okay. So, maybe you need to adjust, right, that goal, because maybe that's not, doable. Certainly with a twisted ankle,
right.
it's not going to
I,
be.
I think it comes to like same with sales, right? I would have to make a certain amount of phone calls per day to make a certain amount of connects. Now, the calls might be 100 calls, but I might only get to speak to 20 people. So I'm making 100 phone calls a day to make 20 connections. That's still a lot of work. So, it's, am I disappointed that I didn't make 100 connections? No, that's not realistic. It's not realistic that I'm going to be able to talk to 100% of the people I call. But if I can speak to 20 people out of 100, I've got 20% success rate on phone calls on a daily basis consistently, then I'm okay with that. You know, I do have more days than less that I walk the 20 miles, and that's great. But the days that I don't walk the 20 miles, am I going to give myself a hard time because I'm three short? No, I've got to celebrate the 17 I did. And I think it's also giving yourself permission to celebrate the small wins, even if they're not exactly what you wanted.
One of the best stories you ever told me um, was when, and it's no surprise because you'll talk to anyone. I mean, the first day you saw me in this building, you were like, "How can I help you?" Like, "Hi, who are you?" And you told me that one of the ways that you built your pipeline, right, and this is what you do as you're walking across the country, is you walked up to random people on the subway no
Mhm.
matter who they were, and gave them your card. And you said, sometimes it was 6 months later, sometimes it was a year later, sometimes it was 3 years later. That person was European or something like that, right? And they would call you and say, "Oh, it happened." I think said it was like a wealthy person and they wanted like an expensive apartment in New York, and you were the first person they called. So when I think about you walking on through the country and how many people you're talking to, um, you don't have any specific reason you're talking to them. You're just talking to them because you're a great human being. But some of those will probably become lifelong connections of yours. And that's one of your goals, right? Is just making connections as you walk
Yeah.
across this country, which I
I
love.
just wrote a story about my very first real estate client that I ever had, Teresa. And I've known Teresa for 21 years. She was literally my first real estate client in New York. And this was upstate New York. She called me the day or so after she moved in, freaking out because she had bats in her attic. And I'm in the mental health space, right? And I'm sitting there going, "Bats in the attic. Okay, she going crazy. What's going on?" Like that was my first response. And she's like, "No, like actual bats." So I'm like, okay, I don't know what to do. I'm new to town, first real estate client ever. I grab two tennis rackets and head over to her house thinking, okay, we'll just get them out. you know? And we've been lifelong friends ever since. We still talk about that. She talks about how she made me get out of the car because I'd never driven in snow before, and I lived in upstate New York, and I had I needed to look successful, so I bought myself a Jaguar XJ6 used, and I was so excited that I had this car. And I felt really successful. She goes, "You're scaring the crap out of me. You do not know how to drive in snow. I'm going to drive." So, and to this day, we still have that conversation. And then she introduced me to some people who lived on the I-90 in Texas. And I was walking right past their home, and I got to stay in their property in a beautiful caboose for a couple of days. And now I've got new lifelong friends. So it's like, wow, you really it's about establishing, for me, sales is about establishing those connections. And when those connections stopped feeling authentic and I wasn't making those connections like I used to, that's when I knew that I had to move on and change tactics and go into something that was more me again.
For sure. So the tennis racket thing, I love. Is that how you got the bats out?
We got two of them out, and then we locked where there was three, and we locked the door and waited for the exterminator to come the next day. But she wouldn't go up into her attic for ages until she knew they were gone.
Talk about full service real estate
Yeah,
agent.
I'm
So
crazy.
that brings up the subject, and you had given me a great thread, so that's why I'm looking at some of the notes you said, because I do not want to take credit for the brilliant things you wrote me. So the four-letter word that we all know and love, anyone who's successful in life, they have is GRIT. So talk to me about what grit means to you,
Hmm.
and uh, also sort of as a share to listeners, um, what is grit and how does one get it in their life? Because I don't think everybody's just born with it. So I'd love to just hear your opinion on that.
I think grit's different for everyone, right? Like for me, grit is digging in, holding on, and keep on going. It's making sure that I'm not going to push myself to a point where I'm harming myself. I'm not going to get myself into a situation that I can't get out of, but I'll push myself to a situation of like, okay, I look back and I did it. And I think it's just making that decision and saying, this is my goal and I'm going to make it happen. I don't know how. And that's okay. I don't know how. I'm just going to trust the process that it's going to happen. And there's sometimes I feel like I was woefully unprepared for this journey, and certainly financially unprepared for this journey as much as I would have liked to have been. But then I'm like, I can do without a lot of stuff that I thought I needed. I don't have to be in a five-star hotel every evening. I don't have to be in a Motel 6 every evening. I can camp in a tent. And it's starting to believe in yourself. To me, grit is believing in yourself and actually giving yourself a pat on the back for the things you've achieved that you've never done before. I grew up on property in Australia, but I wasn't a huge camper. I grew up around snakes. I've got a healthy respect for them, but they're my neighbors now. And it's like, oh, okay, I'm in your spot. Um, so to me, grit is just believing in yourself and pushing yourself to the point where you get through what you get through each day and looking back and going, hey, I did that. Okay. And I can do that again. So, one of the things, my new t shirts, I've got these mental fitness t shirts coming out, and on the back of them is going to say, you've survived 100% of your worst days. Stay strong.
Ah, I love that.
You
Well,
know, and so
when they come
maybe,
out, text me.
yeah, so maybe that's what grit means to me is that I've survived 100% of my worst days. And I'm going to keep surviving 100% of my worst days.
Oh, you got so many great quotes, and you told me you're going to write a book after this, so we're going to get to that in a second. Um, but I love your definition of grit. I talk to so many people about what grit in, and you hit it nail on the head. It's different for every person.
Yeah.
Um, I found I learned grit by working in the hotel restaurant, business for since
Mhm.
I was a kid, and nothing teaches grit like washing dishes. When you're 13 years old at an Irish pub, and to a cranky Irish cook who's like yelling at you to make the plates more clean. But to
Yeah.
this day, at 57, I'm happy to get down and scrub floors or whatever's needed to be done, which I think in today's society, sometimes younger people, I'm not going to get on younger people's case, but they
Yeah.
find that kind of fascinating.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm hopeful, this inspires, the young people who are listening, that just realizing that, they
Yeah.
can build that grit.
But I also
Um,
think that they're navigating something so much different to us. And I was having this conversation the other day with somebody about who's in his 70s. And the same conversations that our parents and grandparents had with us about the internet, we're now having with our kids about AI. And I'm like, to me, it's just so hard to navigate and grasp artificial intelligence and having them do everything for me that's like, that feels foreign to me and it doesn't feel like I'm putting in the work, but they're all having such an easy time of it. And I'm like, okay, how are you getting grit? How are you gaining that experience in your life that gives you that strength to keep pushing through when everything you're doing is making your life easier? Nothing you're doing is making your life harder. But everything you're doing with AI is making my life harder because I have to relearn everything that I've ever learned. So, and now I feel like I know what my grandmother and my mom felt like when the internet was coming in, you know?
yeah. Well, the AI thing, and this is a great point, and I love that you're taking us here. So I'm in the same position as you,
Mm-hmm.
of AI is being thrust into my world, and I'm made to feel like if I don't know what Chat GPT is and AI,
Yeah,
and it's not that hard to use, right? You just open up a Chat GPT free app and you write in the question or whatever you want to do. But to your point, um, I knew a teacher who forced, whenever she was with you, she was a lifelong educator. When she would ask a question that no one like at a meal would know,
Yeah.
inevitably, especially some of the younger people, would go to grab their phones. And she was like, nope. She's like, Google is making us dumber, which is true because in the past, if I was like, Lisa, what was that movie? And you and I would think about it and we would probably figure it out. Now, today's youth just go, oh, I asked ChatGPT what was the movie
Yeah.
about this or what was the movie about
Yeah.
that.
I was talking to
So,
a morning about that, asking, he couldn't remember the name of the movie, but he knew the two actors in it. So I just Googled this actor and this actor, and it gave us the name of the movie. And I'm like, is this the name of the movie? He's like, yeah, yeah, that's the name of the movie. So it's like, we've made it so easy on ourselves. I could tell you my children's phone numbers and five of my closest friends' phone numbers. Everybody else in my phone, I have no idea what their numbers are. If I lost my phone, I'd be screwed. Truly.
right. And that's really bad.
Yeah.
Um, the AI thing, I'll give a note and say if your resume or your cover letter come in and they've been generated by AI, they'll automatically be disqualified.
Wow.
And anytime on LinkedIn now, most of any job postings you see will say we use AI filters
Hmm.
to filter this out.
Yeah.
So it's turning on them and making them work because basically if you read two younger people's AI generated resumes, they look exactly the same,
Right.
right? So where's the creativity, in that?
Yeah.
So that's an
And when
interesting
when you're
component.
talking about your particular show and talking about sales, sales isn't AI generated. It's a people skill. It's a person to person skill. I'm relying that you know your industry enough to give me your expertise, because otherwise I can just go on the computer and do it myself. And so I was finding that people were coming up to me in real estate and saying, well, you're not worth the commission because I found my property in two showings. And I'm like, yes, but it's my 20 years of experience in learning how to listen to what you're looking for that has me not running you around to 50 different properties. You told me what you needed. I know the buildings. I know what you're looking for. And I found you the place that you liked in 2 days or two showings. So if you'd like to see everything else, you just say to me, I want to see everything that's on the market. And I will take you to those two things last. But because I've got 20 years sales experience, and I know how to read my clients and what my clients are looking for, the value comes in the skill of me being able to identify what you're looking for because of my experience, because of my connections, because of my contacts. And I brought that with me on this walk as well. When I'm having conversations with people, it's about getting to know them and being a safe space for them. Same with sales. My clients had to trust me that I was giving them the correct information. And I was constantly battling people that were coming up and saying, well, I saw this property and I saw that property and I saw that property. Why didn't you show me this? And when I worked with the Republic of France, they were a huge transaction for me. I think that was 7 transactions, and they wanted to see everything. And if they found something, I had to try to explain to them that's not a that property doesn't work for you because of this, this, and this reason. And that's why I eliminated that from your search. And once they started understanding that, because they would just come at me with like 15, 20 properties. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. That's a co op. You need a condo. That's this, that's that. But you're dealing with a foreign entity. So my 20 years of experience was filtering that stuff out and giving them two or three that did work for them, as opposed to, you know, just showing them absolutely everything, getting them exhausted, getting myself exhausted, and not working smarter. And like, I couldn't keep team members because team members weren't thinking that way. They were spending all this time just making appointments instead of actually going in and going, oh, that won't work for my client because that faced this way and the kitchen's not big enough, or it doesn't have a window in the kitchen. They really wanted a window in the kitchen. That's not going to work because their bedrooms are really dark and they wanted something nice and bright. You've got to know what you're selling people. And if you don't have that experience, how would you know? Right.
Yeah,
So,
100%.
sales is not about AI, and sales is not about all computer generated stuff. It's about working with people. And I felt like I was no longer working with people. I was working with computers. And I was
Yeah,
working with people that were fed computer crap that wasn't aligning with what they really wanted.
yeah. And you make such a good point, and we may have touched upon this when we spoke when you were in Tucson, but I had and I should send you a copy of this when you actually have a mailing address I could send it to because you would love it. And it's a book
I'll be
called
home.
Strength.
I'll be home.
Oh, yeah. Sheila, it will be one of my gifts to you, Strength to Strength. And in short, what it talked about is like kind of in the first half of your life, it's medically proven, right? From 20 to 40 is that when we're kind of at our fastest in processing information, and it's called a certain type of wisdom, right? And then or a certain type of intelligence. And then when we cross like 40ish, that's why college professors are the better college professors are generally 40 and 50 plus, because
Mm-hmm.
we all have something called crystallized intelligence. And all crystallized intelligence is exactly what you just said, the aggregation of all the life experiences that we've had, that I
Yeah.
don't care how good AI ever gets, it will never be able to process exactly what you just said about real estate, right? AI
Right.
could never go, that apartment won't work because that window faces this way.
Right.
It
Yeah.
just won't. And there's people who ask me, they're like, "Are you concerned that AI is going to knock you out of a job?" They don't even have to finish the sentence, and I'm like, you know what? If it's going to knock me out of a job, then I'm in the wrong industry
Yeah.
because nothing will ever replace you placing your hand in someone else's hand and shaking them and looking them in the eye and being able to read their body language and bring your experience into them
Uh-huh.
and do all that. So
Yeah.
you
I
couldn't
think
have
it
said it better.
became very clear for me when I was watching the movie Sully about the airplane that landed on the Hudson. And when they're
Sure.
having the conversation and redoing the flight simulators to figure out during their trial why it crashed and why they had to land on the Hudson. And it's making those decisions as a human that a computer can't make. Because every time the computer made it, it crashed. But the difference was the human element that was involved. And I think that's what drove me more to, or walked me, I guess is the term that I have to use, that got me walking across the country and having conversations with people. It's because we need to be back to humanizing our connections and our communications and learning how to be a safe space for people to have these communications. And I don't feel safe on the internet and with the computer. I don't feel that that's a safe place for us to be because there's so much information and you don't know what's real and what's not. At least when you're in front of me, I know what's real. I know what's in front of me and what's authentic and having that conversation. If somebody's lying to me, I can tell. I get a feeling or I can be like, okay, that's not making much sense to me. But the computer's just doing what the computer's you're telling it to do. So I feel like, and again, that's part of this whole process, right? Of growth and being purposeful. I felt like my real estate career didn't have much purpose anymore, and it wasn't feeling like I was, and I'm okay with that. I'm absolutely okay with other people being successful. I will share their success and I would cheer them on, and if that's still their passion, I want them to do it and be successful at it. It just was no longer mine, and that's
Yeah.
okay. That's
Yeah.
okay. you
Now
know
let's give you thank you for sharing that. So now let's give you the platform to really dive into the purpose and the goal of this walk. And you mentioned you're writing a book, and you also I'm praying you get picked up by a platform to do a documentary
the
on this.
documentary, yeah. Yeah.
So talk to me about all the mechanics of all those things you wanted to do because those were some of the goals that you set out on.
Yeah. So, well, writing the book was actually it became just more cathartic for me. If you go onto my website, you'll see I do my musings, and it's pretty much every other day I'm posting a story about things I've learned, conversations I've had with people that have sparked something that makes me start questioning. And then I have nothing but time. So I listen to audiobooks, I listen to podcasts while I'm walking, and I'm walking 8 hours a day. So mostly by myself. Like there's sometimes I'll stop and I'll have a conversation with people, but while I'm actually walking, I'm by myself. So I do have a lot of time to think. So the book has really been born on a lot of questions that I've had that I didn't know I had that have come up, and just slowing down and actually having that time and that ability to be able to stop and think and be like, ah, okay, and reconciliation with some of the choices I've made in my life that I've never really held myself accountable for, or that I have just brushed off as like, oh well, that's the way it was. Well, okay, why was it that way? Why did I react that way? Or why did I allow that person to treat me that way? Or why did I treat somebody that way? Why did I respond in this fashion or that fashion, as opposed to how I might have handled it now? Like I'll be 51 in 6 days. And I feel like when I turned 50, I feel like I was gifted wisdom that I didn't have before then. I feel like I was open to more, and it's not my own wisdom necessarily. I open to other people's wisdom that they've imparted on me that I'm actually starting to hear that I wasn't hearing before. With our kids, right? Our kids are mine are a little older than yours, and but they question everything. And you like, I know what I'm telling you is right. I'm trying to tell you so you don't make the same mistakes. And then I started thinking, huh, I'm going to let them make their own mistakes because that's how they grow. I'm going to be there if they fall. I'm going to be there if they need me. I'm not going to let them get into a dangerous situation, but I'm going to not try to fix everything for everybody because that's
Yeah.
part of dumbing down society, right? Is if I'm the person who keeps jumping in and fixing everything, how are they going to learn to fix it themselves?
Yeah. And you and I, well, I can speak for myself. If my parents many times, and they're amazing, and one of the amazing things they did was, besides letting me put myself in a dangerous situation, they
Mm-hmm.
would just watch something that they knew the outcome was not going to be positive, or it was not going to be my goal, but they
Yeah,
knew by telling me that don't do that, because first off, I would not listen to them and I would do the
yeah,
exact opposite of what they
yeah,
recommended. And then because they were such great parents and they were so wise, they were like, he'll figure it out for himself. He's not going to hurt himself.
yeah.
Um, but he needs to learn that lesson. So, off that thread, so give me a couple examples, if you will, of some questions that kind of came up as you were spending all this time and thinking of the book.
Oh gosh. So many. I listen to this podcast on Mondays called Mondays Beyond the Mic with Dr. Elaine. And it's last week and the week before and next week, which I've been invited to be on the show next week, which is exciting, or this coming Monday, is about fighting fair in relationships. And I've learned that for me, it's important to allow people to go through their own process while they're emotionally going through something and they're trying to figure that out. That instead of interjecting or jumping in and trying to fix it, give them that grace and that space to be able to articulate what they're actually going through before they involve you and your emotions. And that was a big lesson for me to talk about and hear something like that, because I'm like, huh, I have usually been the person that jumps in and tries to fix things. And that's not always healthy. I'm hoping that the people in my life are mature enough to be able to take care of themselves. And when they're ready to come and talk to me about something, it's because they've thought it through and they know what what they need, as opposed to everyone flailing and drowning. Fighting fair to me is about, am I asking this person to talk to me because I need comfort or because I want them to be okay? you know so it's a balance of, am I being selfish, or am I asking them because I truly care? And some days it has been like, I'm feeling insecure and I want to know if I've done something wrong. Well, it's not about me. If it was about me, that person would tell me, I would hope. And I've got to give them that grace to be able to do that. So there's some of the lessons I've learned, which is the questions that I have, and I think so many other people have. um what other things have I learned? Never judge a book by its cover.
Mhm.
It's so true. It's so true. Some of the nicest people I've met have been, they're covered in mud and dirt and missing teeth, and I've had some great conversations with them. They're just normal, hardworking people. And then I've met people who are in $5 million apartments and $20,000 suits, and they're arrogant assholes that don't care about anybody. It's like, so I've learned, don't judge a book by its cover, and money doesn't buy um, class. Money doesn't buy, you know, a lot of things that are important.
Yeah, for sure. Well,
Yeah.
first off, congratulations on going on. See, now you're going to be a podcast star. And I'll say I knew you when. So
You have
Mondays
to teach me how
beyond.
to do my own podcast one day.
I once you get back, and I've got all the gear for you. So Monday's Beyond the Mic. So you're going to be featured, which will be 19, 20, 21st. So for our listeners, because I'm going to hope to put this up in the next day, to
Awesome.
get it up. And
Yeah.
then I love Fighting Fair. One of the things I learned, by the way, for any of our listeners who are looking for relationship management, I was taught this by my therapist. Is the I don't know if you've heard of the Imago technique, and it
Hmm.
stands for something, right? It's an acronym. I'm trying not to use acronyms, by the way, because like we're over acronymed as a society.
Yeah.
But it's just for the listener, it's like if you have a challenge with me, and or I have a challenge with you, is you share that challenge, and then I listen, and then I repeat what I think I heard back to
Hmm.
you, and then you modify if necessary, and then I respond to that. Um, and I found in all aspects of relationships with children, with my life partner, with my family,
Hmm.
it's like 100% success rate, right? If you both play by that. I'm saddened that it took me 57 years of life to figure this one out because it would have saved me
Yeah.
a lot of grief. But
But
I love
also,
that fight.
we've got to be open and in a place to be able to articulate that, to be able to put that into our own practice. So in previous relationships, I probably wasn't in the state of mind to be able to emotionally do that. For me, being a single mom, raising two kids in a foreign country without family around, I had to do absolutely everything. There was not one thing in one aspect in my life I was not responsible for. I had three mouths to feed, plus a dog, um, and I had to do it all on my own. I wasn't in a relationship that was supporting of that at all. I was in a relationship, but it wasn't, we didn't live together. They weren't responsible for my children, and it was toxic. And then getting out of that, I was just like, I was always in fix it mode. Everything was survival and fix it mode. It was like, okay, I've got this due, I've got to pay this, and I've got that, and this commission's not coming in until this time. And it was this delicate balancing act that I don't think until I started this walk that I would have had the emotional capacity to slow down, because I would have just hit a wall and I would have drowned. If I stopped swimming, if I stopped paddling under the water there, I would have drowned. And I think slowing down on this walk and actually taking my time to think about the things that are important and the questions I had, and reconciling my behavior and others' behavior and things that I had allowed in my life, both my own behaviors and others. Now I'm like, oh, okay, I've got the grace to be able to slow down and go through that. And now I can be kinder to myself and more supportive of the people I'm in relationships with, whether that's my children or my friends or a partner or whoever it is in my life. Like, I've got a friend right now, she's going through a really hard time and she's really struggling. And I'm like, if you need help, like if you need to talk it through, I'll be your sounding board. And we do. She calls me constantly and we work through things, and now we've got this thing of like, okay, thank you. I just needed to get that off my chest, but I didn't need judgment. I didn't need it to be fixed. I just needed to get it out. And that's what my writing has become as well. I don't know if you've had a chance to read some of my
I have.
articles, but a lot of my articles are reflection on conversations that I've had with people and questions that are brought up of like, huh, I didn't think of it that way, or you've made me think of something in a different way, or I've made them think of something in a different way. So I think the art of listening is a huge sales technique that is underrated,
Hmm. For
you
sure.
know.
So
So
I love that. And so I'm gonna ask you one question, then I want to have you promote and give us all the information and for how to support you, and
mhm.
then have you, as we like to do, get down to the one thing. But first off, talk to me because you in almost all your posts, I love the fact that you are always have a picture of the hammock. So talk to me
Yes.
about the significance of the hammock because it's
uh,
very prevalent in all your
I need a
information.
name for my hammock. I named my push cart, but I don't have a name for my hammock. She's my emotional support fabric. um Yeah, so I go in. That's where I take my phone calls when I'm talking to families about the miles I'm going to walk for their loved one. If they've lost somebody to suicide, I'll have a conversation with them afterwards. At the end of the evening, I might hang up my hammock wherever I can and have a conversation with them. So I call it hammock time. We talk about their loved one. We talk about their life since, what they've experienced since, how grief has shaped them, how life, when you've got a tragedy in your life, how that spins you into a different direction that you didn't see coming. And that doesn't necessarily just mean suicide. It could be from anything. I just happen to talk to people who've lost people to suicide more. Um, but my hammock is my safe space. That's the space where I can write, I can listen, I can be quiet. I'm just floating off the ground. And, if I'm in the right space, I can listen to nature and just it forces me to slow down. It's my one place where when I'm there, I'm in my little bubble, my little cocoon, my little emotional support fabric. It's my peaceful place. And I absolutely 100% when I get back to 9:45, I'm figuring out how to put a hammock up in my apartment. I have no idea where, but it's gonna
Well,
be
your
it.
place is big. I think you can buy those metal things that hold it,
Oh no, it
right?
has to be it has to be hanging. It can't be.
No, no,
Yeah,
no,
no.
but it does hang. It's just a giant metal structure, whatever. But
I
we'll
think
talk
it's
about
gonna be
that when
so.
you get back.
Yeah, but I have to, or I'll be down in Riverside Park or Central Park on a daily basis. No matter rain, hail, or shine, I'll be down there with my tree.
Sure, I'm
But
sure.
I think find something. It could be a quiet corner in your home. It could be a quiet desk. It could be just a place to reflect. Find that one place because my hammock has. There's been a lot of healing in there. And that's the one place where I give myself permission to. I've cried, I've ugly cried, I've had conversations laughing, I've had, conversations with myself, with God, with the universe, with everything. Like that's my one place where I know that my problems get solved.
I love that. And that's if for the listeners, for myself, for everyone. If you don't have a safe space like that, then make one or
Yeah,
create one or find one. And I think the point is of so many things in life is consistency of that,
yeah.
right?
And you can
Make that
spend
your spot.
$39. It's $39 for a hammock, a cheap hammock. I think I got it at Target or Walmart or something. And it's nothing flash. It's truly, truly just this one piece of fabric that really, truly holds me together. And it's so weird. It's so strange that I've almost become addicted to it. And it doesn't come down until I'm ready to pack and leave. You
I
know,
love that.
that's the last thing I pack.
What a good thing to be addicted to, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I need
So
a
tell
name
us.
for it though.
No, well, maybe for any listeners, we'll get this out. Maybe we'll have a naming contest,
There you go.
and and I'll have to think of something too because Gertrude is your vehicle. I know that, and so that's good. To promote yourself and your site and how people can get involved and
Yep,
reach out to you. So, and I'll also put that obviously in the show notes. But
perfect.
take the mic for
So
that.
yeah, so it's keepmepostedtoday.com. So don't forget the today, keepmepostedtoday.com. And people can go on and read my musings. They can donate if they would like. I encourage people to, if they're not going to donate to me, donate to a mental health um, cause that's important to you, or a suicide awareness cause that's important to you. Donate to a local church if they've got support for people going through mental health issues or struggles. Um, and also, I think people need to look at mental health is not just about um, one thing. Like I met a lady this morning in the bathhouse here at the campground. She has a son with schizophrenia and a daughter who is, I believe, a daughter who is mentally challenged, and a another son with autism. And I'm like, how are you doing? That's a lot of mental health struggles that your family's dealing with. How are you? She's like, I'm tired. I'm tired. And I'm like, okay, and she's like, it's nice to talk to somebody that's not judging you. It's nobody is born with any of these kinds of issues and is excited and happy about it. So it's like, how do we become non-judgmental when it comes to our mental health and our mental fitness? Because everybody's got something. Autism is a form of mental health. Bipolar, schizophrenia, borderline personality disorders. You've got thousands of diagnoses. Depression, anxiety. There's so many things, combinations of them all that people are dealing with. Yet that's the one thing as a society that we don't give any grace to. I didn't know that my husband had bipolar. I had no idea. And I have two children with him. So that's a history that I should be able to talk about with somebody and say, hey, you know, okay, I understand, but now I've got to be careful that my children don't get triggered. How, and talk about it to them about, this is not something to be ashamed of. This is, you could very possibly be genetically predisposed to this. And that wasn't your fault, but we treat people like it's their fault. So these are the conversations I'm having that I don't know that a lot of people are having. Instead of, and you go up to somebody and say, hey, Brian, what kind of medication are you taking for your mental health? And you'd sit there and go, well, that's personal. Yeah, I don't want to talk about that. Right. But if I said to you, what do you do to maintain your mental fitness? You'll give me a list of things. I go to therapy. I read. I do this. I play soccer. I play my music. All these things that are contributing to your mental fitness. Then all of a sudden, that conversation about your mental well being is not a scary place to talk about. But if I come from a judgmental perspective, you're gonna you're gonna be a lot. You're gonna be on guard of like, oh, I don't want to. That's too much. I don't want to talk about that because I didn't make you feel safe talking about it.
Yeah.
So and this is a
Yeah.
perfect stranger. We literally met in towels this morning. you know, you can't get. When you talk about coming to the grassroots and you're standing in a public bathhouse in a campground with a perfect stranger, and they're like, "Oh, I heard that you're walking across the country," because like you're in Louisiana and it's a very small area. People have heard what I'm doing. Oh, I've heard you're walking across the country. And then you get to talking about it, and then all of a sudden they're disarmed. They're not thinking that you're being judgmental, because you're not. Like, I want people to have these conversations. I want them to be able to feel comfortable talking about stuff, because how do you help people if they don't, if it's hidden? I couldn't help Alex because he wouldn't, it wasn't diagnosed. He wasn't, like, it was diagnosed at the very end. It was too late.
Yeah.
It was too late.
Yeah.
So let's have these conversations. So we talk about goals, that's one of my big goals, is that we become a safe space to have these conversations about mental fitness and change the narrative from mental illness to mental fitness.
I love
So
that. I love
yeah,
that.
yeah,
And you've Lisa, since you started this journey and since I've met you, but especially when you Uh, anytime I write, I don't write mental health anymore. I only write mental fitness. So
yeah.
you have greatly affected me. I'm in
Awesome.
with one of my podcast coach. He's got a group where he put out kind of like a 30-day challenge for everyone to do something every day, which I
Yeah,
already do. But I
yeah,
make sure I put in my mental fitness component to it. Everybody, I'm trying to lead the group in the sense that everybody puts, I did my buys and tries and whatever. And I'm like, what did you do for the thing between your ears? Because
yeah,
that's what's most important, because that's a great takeaway from all of this is that none of the other things, right? The walk doesn't happen for you. The soccer game doesn't happen for me unless I am and you are mentally fit. So
yeah,
that's where it really all needs to start.
yeah. And don't give yourself a hard time if you have bad days, because bad days happen. And it's okay for bad days to happen. Just don't stay there. Don't stay in that really bad mood. Don't stay in that angry space. Feel it. It's important to feel it and then move through it. And
For sure.
that was a big lesson for me too, is how to let go of some stuff, because oof, I there was a lot of things I couldn't let go of, that took a long time to be like, I don't need that. I'm good.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, it doesn't serve you, right, or
Yeah,
anyone. And I've
like
used
validation.
and I like what?
Validation. I don't need to be
Validate.
validated. I need to validate myself.
Yeah.
You know.
And I close out my end of the quote. I think it's Jelly Roll, the artist, who's fantastic, and he's reformed. He was arrested. He was addicted to a lot of things, and he's got this great quote: "The windshield is bigger than the rearview mirror." Right? So
Yeah,
keep looking forward, just like on your walk. Keep looking forward, and don't be so concerned with what's behind you
yeah,
because it's behind you, and you just need to move forward with that.
yeah. Well, I always look at what's behind me as tuition paid for lessons learned.
God, there's so many
Yeah.
quotes that are going to come out of this, Lisa.
Yeah,
Tuition
I've always
paid
said
is what?
for lessons learned. So any
Lesson.
situation I've had, if it's been a bad situation or it's been a challenging situation, that's a tuition I'm paying for the lesson I'm learning. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
on that note, my friend, we will
Yeah.
leave you in Louisiana, but soon you'll
Yes.
be in Mississippi. Thank you so very much for being
Thank
our
you.
lead guest and so much content to share with our listeners. I've learned a lot. I'm sure they learned a lot, and
Yes.
I can't wait to see you. I'm sure I'll talk to you before you get back home.
Oh
But
yeah.
thank you for sharing
Let's
your
try to
time.
talk in the next state. Let's try to talk when I actually hit the East Coast in South Carolina, and let's talk then. And I would have literally walked across the country by then.
Yeah, you will have.
Yeah.
You will have.
Yeah.
All right.
So
So I'm going to finish up here. Thank our listeners. Thank Lisa for this episode of Owning the Goal. Don't stop your recording like we almost did the last time. And we'll keep abreast of your journey. And please make sure you go to keepmepostedtoday.com and or follow Leisa on Facebook, Instagram, and we will get this episode out to our listeners very shortly. So thank you so much, Leisa.
Thank you so much for having me. Hugs to everyone at 945.
Got it.